Breeders' Cup is just around the corner and it moves back to the west coast of America for 2012 as Santa Anita is going to be the host once again, and of course Santa Anita back on traditional dirt. Rachel Candelora from Churchill Downs is with us now to take a look at some of the things we should be looking at to try and find the winners going in to the Breeders' Cup series, because as we mentioned throughout the build-up to Breeders' Cups over the years, prep races become very important, and where the races are run, very important, and Santa Anita has its own unique kind of brand.
Yes, well, considering it is a Californian-based track, so the main overriding bias of the Californian Breeders' Cups is California horses tend to have a huge better record than any other horses coming. However, as we'll see in a few minutes, the Europeans don't have that bad of a record at Santa Anita.
Santa Anita is unique in many respects. We've mentioned already about it now being dirt, but of course people mustn't forget the last 2 years that they've held the Breeders' Cup, which is 3 years ago and 4 years ago. It wasn't a dirt track. In
2008 and 2009 it was an all-weather, it was poly track, so that changed the bias a lot. For a lot of Euros came in and did much better than they would on traditional dirt, but it's now back to traditional dirt. It's a very front-running, speed-biased track, and the turf is also a very speed-favoring track because it is. You know, the official going here would be like firm, good to firm, firm and then firm in places. It's more pavement, asphalt, so it's very, very quick. And the most interesting feature about Santa Anita is the turf sprint track. It is unique to America because it's actually a separate track, very much like is Britain, and it's actually based off the Brighton and the Epsom 6.5 furlong tracks. It's downhill, dog-leg into the straight, so you actually need a horse that has course form, because most horses in America, we run flat around turns. We don't run down hills, over crossings, up straights, and you more need 7 furlong sprinters because they run really hard down the hill and then they have to kick again. Almost very much like York, the 7 furlong sprint. Once you hit the end of the dog leg, and then when you get back onto the main track, everybody kicks again.
Let's talk about why it's so difficult for other horses, therefore, to win in California. And although the Europeans haven't got a terrible record, horses coming in from, if you like, the colder states, horses coming in from Kentucky, in particular from New York, don't have a great record. First of all, the ship. It's a big time difference between New York and California. Yeah,
because also American horses aren't used to shipping. I mean, most European horses can get on a plane, go to Ireland, go to France, go to Italy, go to America, no big deal. But American horses were based at the track, and we just go to the track. So a lot of them are shipped a week, 2 weeks out. But shipping to California, when they've been used to fall, cold weather, and all of a sudden you're in California, it's 90 degrees, 100 degrees, it's really humid, it's right outside Los Angeles, so the air quality is atrocious, to say the least. It's just a really different atmosphere that they have to get ready for, and a lot of them don't.
Let's take a look at a little graphic that Rachel's put together then for some of the things that we should really note about Santa Anita and about basically the kind of horses we really want to see. First of all, let's take a look at how the Europeans have done at the previous 5 Santa Anita Breeders' Cup. And remember, it returned to dirt in 2010. So talk us through this. The overall wins to racers actually looks pretty impressive.
It does look pretty impressive. European-based horses have won 16 times from 50 collective races, and you have to remember in 2008 and 2009 all of a sudden the Breeders' Cup went from 7-8 races to 14 races, so a lot of the races were run on polytrack and turf. But European-based runners have really good records in the Breeders' Cup turf, particularly in California. 11 wins from 19 races. That's one of the highest percentage from anywhere else in the country, and it may just be because the turf is firm, and throughout the summer, particularly a summer like this, most good ground horses don't find their ground till the end of the season, so they're actually just coming into their own, and then it's a $2 million race, $5 million race, $1 million race. You might as well go for it. Main track winners at Santa Anita, this is the interesting one. From 31 main track races in the Breeders' Cup, the last 5 times run at Santa Anita, there's been 5 European winners, but only one of that has been on the actual traditional dirt. 4 others have won on the all-weather when it was polytrack, and Ravens Pass winning the Classic was probably the most well-known example, but there was also a juvenile winner and a couple marathon winners. So,
and the one traditional dirt winner was Arcong.
Yeah, the French-based Arcong, who's still to this day the highest, longest shot ever to win a Breeders' Cup. So Hopefully we'll get one again, but we don't know.
So that's the worrying statistic then. 1 from 31, and it was a huge price horse at around about 90 to 1, our Kong, who won on the Santa Anita dirt when it was traditional dirt. Now, key things to look for when you are trying to find a horse that might be suited by Santa Anita: speed, and a bit more speed.
Yes, you want a horse who's definitely either on the front end or likes to sit 2 or 3 back, and that's where it is, particularly come a little bit wide on the turf and then shoot down, because it is American track. Your final stretch is not that long. We're not talking a 5 furlong home stretch, we're just talking about a furlong and a half. And then on the turf track, it is a very, very tight, twisting turn, very much like Chester or anywhere you just got to keep turning. So if you have a horse that gets unbalanced, or a big horse, they need to go wide and they need to start running a lot earlier, because you don't have that long of a run into the finish.
And we mentioned, of course, about the sprint track, which is 6.5 furlongs down the hill, looking for a horse, therefore, that can go a little bit of a distance of ground, maybe a 7 furlong horse, and it's also very tight on the turf. Now, over the whole of the Breeders' Cup Series, there are several races that have become key exit races into the Breeders' Cup, not necessarily when they're at Santa Anita, but also when the series has been run elsewhere. And Rachel, you've pinpointed 1 or 2 races that we should really take a look at, almost blind. If a horse wins this, it's going to be a player.
No, I have two races blind. Just bet the winner in the Breeders' Cup, and statistically you'll have a lot of money on your hands. And then there's a couple that you should take into consideration but don't necessarily bet blind. The first one has a ready run, and it's the Forgo Stakes. It was at Saratoga, and Godolphin trained MC won it, and it was very impressive. It was a 7 furlong race, and the Forgo is actually normally used as a feeder race into other Breeders' Cup preps, but you normally have either dirt miles, which is a relatively new race, or regular sprints coming out of it. And as it figures, a 7 furlong race, you can either go to a mile or the 6 furlong sprint. MC won. He won impressively, his first Grade 1 win ever. He will probably just be trained straight up to California. Kieran McLaughlin, the Godolphin Creed, normally just train them up to the big race. He will be running in the sprint because he has a lot of front end speed, which will suit that. The biggest problem about him is New York-based horses really don't have that great of a record against California. And the other big thing, Californian sprinters are in a clique of their own. They're not very good for the rest of the country, but they will beat anything that comes into their hometown. So we'll see who lines up against him. But I would be interested at MC. I would just be wary about his competition.
Then we take a look at the key race for the turf sprint, and that's coming up at the end of the month, and that's a race at Santa Anita.
Yes, the Moravich Handicap. This is definitely one. Whoever wins, just back whenever you can, however much you can get on. The last 2 runnings of the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint at Santa Anita have been won by the winner of the Moravich Handicap. It's a course and distance race about 3 weeks out from the Breeders' Cup. It is your ideal prep. California Flag and Desert Code used it, and they both went on to win. And the ironic thing is those 2 are both basically useless horses outside of the Santa Anita turf course.
And that's the Moravich that we know it as, but it's been renamed this year.
Yes, this year for the Santa Anita meeting, for some unknown reason, they've renamed all the stakes races. So if you see a race, now it's the Eddie De La Houssaye Stakes. So if you see that, it's actually the Moravich, and that's the race that you should be looking for.
Okay, the Eddie D Stakes or the Moravich is one in the same race. Let's take a look at the key exit race then going into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. And this is a particularly interesting one because obviously the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf is a very new race, but already in only the few runnings, the race at Belmont you're going to mention has become a key exit.
Yes, and it's particularly a Californian key exit because both the Californian winners, Merrim and Happett's Fly, won the Miss Grillo Stakes. And I do think it has a lot to do because the Miss Grillo is 1 1/16 miles, whereas the Juvenile Fillies Turf is 1 mile. So if you can stay on at the end of that, the Juvenile Turf will probably run a little bit quicker and you can stay on for the mile. But both of those, and the Miss Grillo has had tons of placed horses come out of it in the Breeders' Cup. So if you fancy one that you thought ran very well there, just go, because this one and the Moravich are going to be the 2 that you're going to find winners out of.
I'm going to, just before we take a look at the key exit for the Classic, there's another race up in Canada coming up quite soon as well. The Summer Stakes is another one which isn't quite as strong as that, but another one to take a note of.
Yes, this Saturday at Woodbine outside of Toronto in Canada, there's 2 juvenile turf races. There's a fillies one, and then there's the Summer Stakes, which is for the boys, and both of them, but more the Summer Stakes for the juvenile for the juveniles on the turf, that is a very much a formful exit race for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile turf.
Okay then, and the Classic itself, it's a race which we know as the Goodwood, but we're going to hear in a moment from Rachel that they've renamed it again for this year. But the Goodwood, run at Santa Anita, the long-established trial, and for the last few years they've bumped it up to Grade 1 status, and of course the race that gave us Pleasantly Perfect.
Gave you Pleasantly Perfect, it gave you Tis Now, it almost gave you Game On Dude last year, it's given you a couple winners and a lot of in-the-money shots. It's now called the Awesome Again. Awesome Again didn't win it, and then he went on to Breeders' Cup, just different years. It's going to be a very, very interesting prep this time because you get the course form. It's not the distance, it's 1 1/8 miles, but we can elaborate from there. You do get the course form, and you're going to have a lot of the top movers in the betting right now are going to show up in the Goodwood. So this could be a key race to see how they all stack up against each other at the Breeders' Cup track. And hopefully we'll find a winner out of that.
Here at the moment, however, is the betting going into the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita on the 3rd of November. And Game On Dude is currently the 7-1 favourite for Bob Baffert. Camelot, who's just about in any list for any race that's open to male horses in the world, is currently at 8-1 with Fort Larned. Also at 8-1 is Ron the Greek. And I get the impression your first horse that you'd probably want to swerve at those prices might be Doulahan.
I wouldn't touch Doulahan with your money, my money, anybody's money. Although the interesting thing to note is that if we take out Camelot, because we don't know after the St. Leger what he's going to do, the top 4 horses in there have all won a Breeders' Cup Classic win-in-your-in race. There have been 4 major handicapping division Grade 1s in the U.S. so far this year. And Game On Dude, Fort Larned, Ron the Greek, and Doulahan are the 4 who've won it. So you can say that the handicapping division is wide open. Doulahan, though, you could say he's the most accomplished 3-year-old in America right now. He's won 3 Grade 1s a lifetime, which is no small feat, but they've all been on synthetic. And he won the Pacific Classic, that was on synthetic at Del Mar. He's won at Keeneland, which is synthetic. He's just not a dirt horse. He doesn't have the dirt speed. He can grind all day long, but at the end of the day, you do need to turn a foot. And the interesting thing is his connections are, in 2 weeks, going to the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic at Belmont, which is the win-in-your-in for the turf. So
gives them options.
It gives them options. He's already in the Classic, and knowing the connections, they'll probably want to try for a Classic, but who knows if he can do that. He can definitely get 1.5 miles. He has 1 gear and he can run all day long, but we'll see what happens. But if he's in the Classic, I wouldn't touch him. I
suppose the thing about the market as it stands, take Camelot out of it, because if you look like he is the unknown quantity, they've got the right favourite in Game On Dude because he is the horse. It's the old phrase, isn't it? He's been there, done that. He's got the T-shirt. We know he can run the track, and he's trained by Uncle Bob. Everything, all the boxes are ticked for him at the moment.
Well, he's the only one with proper course and distance form, constant top grade form. He has 4 wins from 4 runnings at Santa Anita. He won the Goodwood last year. He won the Santa Anita Handicap last year. He was going to go and run in it again this year and probably would have destroyed the field. However, they decided to go to Dubai for the World Cup. Probably a mistake. He was 2nd last year in the Breeders' Cup. He comes alive in California. He can do the synthetics, he can do dirt, he's better on dirt. And hopefully Chantel Sutherland got her bad ride out of the way when losing the Pacific Classic last time, that she'll probably want to knuckle down and finally get her Breeders' Cup with this horse.
If there were, I feel like, a sting in the tail for Bob Baffert, who is of course a trainer you've always got to take note of going into any Breeders' Cup, it might be a horse that he formerly trained.
Yes, he formerly trained a horse that was owned by Zabeel International. You'll see them running a lot in Dubai. And it was Richard's kid. He started life in California. He was purchased privately. He went to Dubai for 1.5 years. And I think he finished 5th in his best ever start. Came back, was given to Baffert. Won twice on the trot at Santa Anita, done very well, and then he was sold out from under Bob Baffert, given to Doug O'Neill. He's actually running with Leandro Mora, which is Doug O'Neill's assistant, because O'Neill can't train right now. But he's a huge price. I know he's in the other ones. He's about 20-25 to 1. He's been chasing around Game On Dude all summer since he's been here. So he may not win. Game On Dude may just be that much better of a horse. But Richard's kid is coming back into brilliant form, and at a huge price, he should be thereabouts somewhere.
Okay, that's an early look at what is going to be coming up at the Breeders' Cup. A little bit later on in the programme, Rachel will be giving us a horse watch for horses from Britain and also from America.